The snow had begun falling before dawn, drifting down in pale sheets that softened the world and muted every sound. By sunrise, the town of Mayfield was wrapped in white hush. The trees bowed under the weight of winter, and the river that carved through the woods churned sluggishly under a crust of ice. It was the kind of morning most people stayed inside, warming their hands around mugs of coffee, grateful they didn't need to face the cold. But Eric Dalton was already awake, tugging thick boots onto his feet while his 5-year-old daughter, Lily, slept upstairs. Being a single father meant rising early, not out of necessity, but out of habit. Something about the stillness of the hours before his daughter's laughter filled the house made him feel grounded. He liked to walk the edge of the river, both to clear his head and to remind himself that even in winter, the world kept moving. He zipped his coat to his chin, stepped outside, and let the cold nip at his cheeks. The path through the woods had always been friendly enough, even when blanketed with snow. He followed it now, listening to the dampened crunch of his boots and the distant groan of the river straining under its icy shell. A light wind whispered through the barren branches. By the time he reached the narrow bridge spanning the river, the snowfall had thickened. He leaned against the railing and breathed in the crisp morning air. Moments like these steadied him, especially after the tough years. His wife, Claire, had passed when Lily was barely 2, and although time had helped ease the pain, there were mornings he still reached for someone who wasn't there. But Lily kept him anchored, her small hand in his each day an unspoken reminder to keep going. He turned to start his walk back when a sound cut through the quiet. A splash, then a faint cry, thin, muffled, almost swallowed by the wind. At first, Eric thought it might have been an animal, but instinct tugged hard at him, telling him something was wrong. He rushed to the edge of the bridge and peered over. The river was dark beneath the thin crust of ice. Chunks of frozen water drifted along the surface, bumping together with soft clinks. But halfway downstream, where the ice had cracked open, the water churned violently. Something small broke the surface, bobbing once before slipping under again. And then he heard it, clearer this time, so heartbreakingly human that every muscle in him snapped to attention. "Mama!" It was a whisper, a plea, impossible but unmistakable. Eric's mind emptied of everything except one fact. There was a child in the river. He vaulted over the railing without thinking. The drop wasn't far, but he landed hard, pain spiking through his knees. He scrambled to the water's edge, breath clouding in frantic bursts, and scanned for movement. Another weak cry rose from the broken ice. "Hold on," he muttered, lowering himself into the freezing water. The cold was a shock that nearly knocked the air from his lungs. He sucked in a sharp breath and fought the instinct to claw his way out. The river surged around his chest, numbing him almost instantly. He forced himself onward, kicking hard to reach the pulsing patch of water where he'd seen something break through. Then he saw it again, a tiny hand. His pulse hammered. He pushed forward, breaking through the broken ice with his forearm, feeling jagged edges scrape his skin. He reached out blindly, fingers brushing against something small, soft, and terrifyingly still. A baby. She could not have been more than a few months old, bundled in a soaked blanket that dragged her down like an anchor. Her skin was pale, nearly blue, and her lips quivered as she tried to cry. "I've got you," Eric gasped, pulling her against his chest with hands that were beginning to lose feeling. He turned and fought his way back toward the bank, pushing through the current with legs that felt heavy as stone. When he finally reached the shore, he collapsed backward into the snow, cradling the baby to keep her warm. Her tiny chest fluttered with shallow breaths. Her eyelids struggled to stay open. She made a faint sound, more of a sigh than a word, but it broke something open inside him. "Chill. You're safe now," he whispered, tucking the blanket tighter around her. Fear and fury mingled in his chest. Someone had thrown this child into the creek. Someone had tried to kill her. He glanced upstream and noticed for the first time footprints on the bridge, multiple sets leading away into the woods on the opposite side. Whoever had done this was long gone, but the baby was alive. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called 911. His voice trembled as he explained the situation, and the dispatcher promised help was on the way. He slipped his coat off, wrapped it around the baby, and held her close to his chest to share what warmth he could. Minutes stretched endlessly. The baby whimpered once, her little hand gripping the fabric of his coat. He held her tighter. "It's okay. You're not alone," he murmured. "You're not going anywhere." When he heard the distant wail of sirens, his breath finally eased. The hospital was warm, bright, and buzzing with the low hum of activity. A nurse guided Eric through the hallways, offering a steadying hand even though he insisted he was fine. In truth, his body still felt numb, not from the cold, but from the weight of what had happened. They led him to a small room where the baby lay in an incubator, bundled in pink blankets. Her cheeks were fuller now, color slowly returning. A doctor entered, smiling warmly. "She's stable," the doctor said. "Hypothermia, but we caught it early enough. No signs of lasting harm." Eric exhaled, a breath that seemed to release hours, years, even of tension. "Do you know what happened?" he asked. The doctor's smile faded. "Police are investigating. She was abandoned deliberately. They haven't found anyone yet." A burn of anger flared in Eric's chest, but it softened when he looked at the tiny baby sleeping peacefully. He felt a tug of connection he couldn't explain, as if the river had delivered her straight into his life. "Has she woken up at all?" he asked quietly. "Yes, briefly," the doctor replied. The nurse said she kept whispering for her mother. Eric's throat tightened. He remembered that faint voice on the wind, the one that had pushed him into the icy water before he could think. "Can I stay with her?" he asked. The doctor nodded. "Of course." Days passed, each one drawing him closer to the child. The hospital staff noticed how she responded to him, how her fingers curled around his when he reached into the incubator, how her breathing eased when he spoke softly beside her. Lily came to visit, pressing her small face against the glass and giggling when the baby blinked up at her. "Daddy," she whispered, tugging his sleeve. "Can we keep her? She needs somebody." He knelt beside his daughter, smoothing her hair. "We don't know what will happen yet," he said gently, "but we'll make sure she's safe." But deep down, he already knew. The ache he felt whenever he left the hospital, the way his heart lifted when he returned, it all told him the same thing. He wanted her to be part of their family. The police found nothing. No parents came forward. No relatives. The baby, abandoned violently and without reason, had no one. Except him. The adoption process was long and tangled, but he didn't falter. He filled out paperwork, attended hearings, proved again and again that he could care for her. And each time he returned to the hospital, she was waiting with wide, curious eyes, as if she already knew. When the day finally came to take her home, he lifted her gently from the crib. She blinked up at him, her lips forming a soft, familiar sound. "Mama!" He pressed a kiss to her forehead, his voice thick with emotion. "You won't need to cry for her anymore," he whispered. "You have us now." Lily clapped excitedly, reaching for her new sister. Eric held the baby close as they stepped outside into the winter air. Not cold and punishing this time, but crisp and full of promise. Snowflakes drifted around them, soft and glimmering, and the river in the distance murmured beneath its icy skin, as if blessing their new beginning. The world had thrown this child into darkness, into freezing water meant to swallow her whole. But she had whispered for her mother, and a father had heard her. And from that moment on, she would never be alone again.